What's up, everybody? So as some of you may be aware, Persona 5 got a new gameplay trailer not too long ago, and it was glorious. This game looks to be just as sweet as 3 and 4, if not more so, and being gigantic fans of the series here at Team Pizza, we've been watching it over and over and over, scrubbing through every scene frame by frame to see what tiny details we can glean from what's going on here. As such, I've literally been up all night, putting together a game explain style video detailing our findings. We're going to be doing this step by step, picking apart individual scenes as they happen, then reviewing over what we've learned at the end to see how it all ties together. So sit back and relax as we rev up our non-existent analysis machine and see what we can learn about Persona 5. First off, I need to introduce you to a certain other piece of promotional material, because it'll play a major part in this discussion. This picture was recently released as the key visual for Persona 5. In it, you'll notice the character from the teaser trailer holding a prison name tag with a height chart behind him, as if he's getting a mugshot taken. However, the tag, instead of his name, reads, "Let us start the game." He's also got a persona standing behind him that looks simultaneously elegant and sinister at the same time. It has the suit, collar, and what appears to be the hat of a gentleman, but also a flaming mouth and matching eyes, with gigantic claws and a chain that seems to connect its back to the protagonist. By the way, time for formal introductions. This guy has been confirmed as the game's protagonist, but he also goes by the handle of the Phantom, for reasons that will become clear soon. Also, random observation, based on this height chart, I can also tell you that he's approximately 5'5". Real subtle, guys. Anyway, let's get to the actual trailer. We see a couple things in these opening shots: a helicopter flying over a lake, and a rounded building that appears to be a casino, based on the many rows of slot machines inside. Oddly enough, though, nobody seems to be using any of them. And this is followed by 3 individuals in suits and sunglasses, who are eyeing their surroundings as if they're looking for something in particular. Perhaps our friend hopping around on the higher levels here with the mask. Whatever he's doing, it seems to go wrong, because an alarm sounds, he jumps out one of the stained glass windows and lands nimbly on the ground below, only to be caught in the act by what appear to be the local authorities. Now let's talk color for a second, because believe it or not, it's a very important aspect of figuring out what this trailer is trying to tell us. It's not uncommon knowledge among Persona fans that every game in the series has been represented by a particular color, and in some ways, this color represents the overall themes and tone for that title. In fact, this can actually be seen in another piece of promotional art featuring the protagonists from all 3 of the recent games holding masks. For Persona 3, the central color was blue. Persona 4's defining color was yellow, and as for Persona 5, well, one look at this scene makes it pretty obvious that this game's hue of choice is red. In fact, here's a detail you might not have caught. Many of the characters in this game incorporate red into their outfit in some way. The persona from the promotional art has a red suit, the Phantom has red gloves, his Muscle has a red tie, and half the Cat Burglar's jumpsuit is, you guessed it, a lighter shade of crimson. The other half is zipper metal gray. Not sure what that's supposed to represent other than my declining faith in Japanese character designs, but I digress. You know what any Persona game should never be without? The Velvet Room, and boy does this one look different. Not just the fact that it looks like a prison of sorts, take a look at Igor's assistants. Elizabeth, Theodore, and Margaret before them had an aura of sophistication and calm about them, and there's a reason for that. The Velvet Room, as has appeared in all the games, is a place between consciousness and subconsciousness, only visible to those with high spiritual sensitivity. Like the main color of the game, the form the room takes is symbolic in some way to those that enter it, as is the assistant that helps Igor with the duty of managing that particular person's powers. So right off the bat, not only does this iteration of the room seem much less inviting, but the assistants are also radically different than anything we've seen before. Their design and movements are jarring, to say the least. They appear to be guards in this particular prison, with matching eye patches and different hairstyles. Wait, assistant as in plural? Well, that's odd, isn't it? What do you need 2 of them for? Does this serve some kind of gameplay purpose specifically for this title? Like, does each one offer the player some different service? Or does it just represent the Phantom's psyche in some symbolic way we don't yet understand? Either way, Igor himself seems not to have changed, which I wish I could say is comforting, but if he's the warden of this prison, it makes me even less excited to be here. Next we get this shot of the crosswalk from the teaser wait, back that up. Look at what's causing this explosion. If we frame by frame this, it appears to be a person falling off this building we're looking down from. A person wearing a coat not unlike the one we saw the Phantom wearing, and trailing behind him in a similar way. As soon as he touches ground though, an explosion happens, and from this burst of power is born a being with pointed shoulder pads, a huge hat, a neck ruffle, razor-sharp claws, and gigantic wings. Gee, doesn't that look familiar? All he's missing is the chain. Oh wait! During the last bits of the shot before the logo comes in, we can briefly see the chain flying up from some unknown source, as if chasing after this persona. Perhaps the most important thing this clarifies is that the chain is not a natural part of this creature's design, something to keep in mind for the review at the end of this. And at last, we get to our first bits of gameplay. Now pay attention to the date, April 11th, aka what is soon to be a very busy start of the week for our friend the Phantom, because it never changes throughout the whole video. Either that or it's just a placeholder date for a more functional calendar later on. Interestingly enough, the fact that it's a Monday also suggests that this game's story takes place as soon as 2016. Now, right off the bat, you immediately notice how different these environments feel than the ones in Personas 3 and 4. Persona 4 especially had a very focused group of townsfolk to focus your attention on, but here, there's probably 100 people in that subway car alone, and eerily enough, none of them have defining facial features. You may think it's just the angle we see most of these people from, but no! Both this girl on her cell phone back here and this man we see in a later shot have completely blank faces. And to explain why that is, I have to expand on what kind of tone and theme this game is trying to set. Dengeki PlayStation Magazine did a report a while back about Persona 5, and how its story would be centered around the hardships of living in a modern-day society. Daniel Floyd of Extra Credits fame once said, and I quote, "I don't think the human brain was designed to exist in a world where there are 300 billion others like us. The desire to stand out and feel unique is one of the most socially crushing problems we face as individuals, and yet, a lot of us, in search of that unique identity, find ourselves constrained in some way by the rules that society enforces to keep itself running smoothly." What a catch-22, eh? It's as if you're in a prison with no bars, yet you cannot leave. Coming from somebody who is working in retail for 12 months, I can tell you all about what that feels like. And so can these guys, apparently. Look how slumped over and depressed these businessmen look. These are the quintessential 9-to-5ers. They played by society's rules, and look what it got them. Busting their asses in a job they hate for 40 years so they could spend the last 25 years of their life sitting on a couch and watching television, counting down the days until they need to be moved to a retirement home. Not a very appealing looking existence, is it? Now run that in stark contrast to the other members of your team. They're vibrant, colorful, and outgoing. They have a lust for life that makes you glad to have them as a part of your existence. Look how Ryuji, this guy's name is Ryuji by the way, runs down the road with the biggest grin you've ever seen and slides down a guardrail Pete Townsend style. Look how Anna, this girl's name is Anna by the way, sings and dances in the rain like there's not a care in the world. They are identifiable people. And as for the cat, also known as Morgana, well, one look at her design tells you that her very existence is anything but standard procedure. Morgana is actually a shapeshifter, believe it or not, and this answers a burning question I had upon rewatching the first few shots of this trailer. In the opening shots, we can see the playable characters all hopping around the heights of the city, and they're all accounted for. Thanks to the coat, we know this is the Phantom. Next up is Anna, zippers and all. Fast forward a bit and you'll see Ryuji, but hold up. We skipped somebody. Look at this person on the billboard with the cat-like mask and tail. Could this mean that Morgana has a human-like form as well that we just haven't seen in full detail yet? Only time will tell. What we don't need confirmation on, though, is how insanely detailed and stylized this game is. Conversations look so much more dynamic this time around, the scene literally ripping open to give you a better look at the people involved. Look at the cafe that seems to serve as the main hangout for these four, and how well lived it is. I want to visit this place and eat some of those potato chips. Look at this scene in the classroom. You can actually see a progression of thought go through your fellow students' heads as the teacher prepares to huck that piece of chalk at you. Girl in the middle realizes what's happening and guards herself instinctively. Guy in row 2 ducks to help him dodge the incoming projectile, then boom! Phantom reels way back, and the girl to his right just realizes she was the one sitting next to the idiot not paying attention. Anna even recoils in surprise for a second before turning around to check if you're okay. You know, for a high school teacher, dude's got a hell of an arm. Why isn't he playable? And speaking of production values, don't even get me started on the menus. Well, okay, because I'm gonna spend the next few minutes discussing them, but you know what I mean. I think this was one of the big takeaway moments of the trailer, just how stylized and intricate everything looks now. I get the definite feeling that the Persona team has always wanted to do menus like this, but didn't have the processing power before to make them happen without implementing some absolutely atrocious load times. Now that we've got more powerful consoles to work with, though, they can do whatever they want with no downtime, and it looks awesome. But don't you get the feeling that something's missing from the menu here? Some kind of option that the other games have had that this one doesn't? That's right, there is no option here to check your social links. This has led a lot of people to speculate that either social links aren't in this game at all, or they work in a very different manner than in 3 and 4. Personally, considering the overall theme of the game, I wouldn't be surprised in the least if it didn't exactly encourage you to go out and meet people. And speaking of bucking tradition, I bet old school fans are squeeing in joy at this equipment menu, because it's showing a couple different details that you might not have caught on the first viewing. First off is the slot for clothes. Thanks to fans, we know the item here is called a Shujin High School Winter Uniform. This seems to reveal that Persona is finally going the route of other Japanese games, and separating your armor from your outfit, allowing players to dress however they like without affecting their stats. Fingers crossed this means the maid costume is still a thing. Also, check out the top of this screen. Not only does your character have a place to equip a melee weapon, but also a gun as well. This is a feature that the series hasn't seen since Persona 2, and if it plays anything like it did in that game, it'll serve to give players even more options in combat. Plus, thanks to the fans, we even know which types of weapons each character will wield. The Phantom likes using knives and pistols. Ryuji has an affinity for bludgeoning tools and shotguns. Anna uses whips and submachine guns, and Morgana wields swords and slingshots. We can even see hints of this in the weapon shop menu. Now, I can't read Japanese proficiently, but a little time on lexilogos.com has revealed to me that this dog tag down here reads Morugana. Of course, after going through all that trouble, somebody posted a video just this morning that fully translates everything and pretty much confirms my findings. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video if you're interested, but the point is, this means that the weapon shop conveniently sorts its equipment on a per-character basis. This is also led credence by the first tag offering you knives and pistols based on the icons. This is important to note because of what's printed on the dog tag. First off, the Fool. This tells us that, like all Persona protagonists, the Phantom's Arcana group is the Fool, which is number 0 in the tarot deck and symbolically represents beginnings or a long journey ahead. But that other phrase, Joker, that needs addressing. Persona deals in tarot, sure, but normal playing cards have never shown up in the series as far as I can tell. The only other time the term Joker has shown up is, again, in Persona 2, but that referred to both an assassin character and the virus he inflicted upon people he took hits from, so it's very unlikely that he has anything to do with the Phantom. For now, this word and its meaning is a mystery. Equally as mysterious is the man driving the subway here. It's not clear whether he's possessed, infected, or was just a monster all along, but no matter how you slice it, something is not right with him. It's so not right, in fact, that he ends up crashing the vehicle he's driving. The only thing I can glean from this is that this is definitely not the protagonist's train, based on how calmly he's walking away from the scene of his subway trip earlier in the trailer. And at long last, that brings us to the dungeons. Immediately, fans will notice how open these areas are compared to the rest of the series. In Personas 3 and 4, dungeons were little more than glorified hallways, but in Persona 5, you can go up, down, around, and even do a little bit of light platforming. But in the words of Slow Beef, check your feet. Notice how every time the Phantom so much as steps, there's this wave of dark red and black energy that pools around his shoes. We believe that whatever is causing this is also the reason he's so nimble and spry, giving him the power to perform all kinds of inhuman feats of agility. In fact, we see just how inhuman they are a shot later, when he's practically blinking from cover to cover Dishonored style, even kicking up a little bit of whatever's piloting these movements and splattering it on the screen. But then we get a scene that takes place in what appears to be a hallway from the exact same building. Everything's falling apart, and the party is understandably trying to escape getting crushed, but look closer. Not only has Morgana reverted to her normal cat form, but every single one of them has removed their mask. In screenshots, you'll notice everyone has one of these. This is because these masks are to Persona 5 what the guns were to Persona 3, what the glasses were to Persona 4. They are the tools by which you can both perceive and interact with the dark side of the world, so removing them, especially knee-deep in what appears to be hot territory, is a curious choice for a number of reasons. Perhaps something didn't go according to plan? Or maybe things did go according to plan, and now there's simply no need to use them anymore. Either way, we are super curious about the events leading up to this. Then we get this shot of the protagonist behind bars, but he's not locked up just anywhere, mind you. If the color of the walls wasn't a strong enough clue, maybe slowing down the zoom in at the start and showing you who's guarding his cage will be. Yep. It's not a 100% clear shot of them, but there they are, eye patches and everything. This guy is imprisoned in the Velvet Room. What in the world could that mean? Before you even get time to digest that thought though, now we get our first shots of combat. But again, slowing this footage down a peg reveals even more details that question everything you thought you knew about this series. You can only see it really clearly for a couple frames, but those aren't shadows the team is filling full of holes. Those are personas, specifically 2 Sandmans and a Pyrojack. Now admittedly, I haven't played the first 2 games, so as far as I know, this is a series first. You fought other Persona users, but never the creatures themselves. That's usually territory for the Shin Megami Tensei series, and only because you can actually recruit any of those opponents to your side in that game. And if it's not obvious by now, what's happening here is this game's version of the famous all-out attack, complete with plenty of symbols for the word DO appearing all over screen. As in, also we get a brief glimpse of Morgana's slingshot in action, so that's cool. The only other shot worth mentioning here is what happens at the end. We once again see the Phantom, or what appears to be the Phantom, with blood splattered on his face in the shape of the mask. However, his eyes bear a striking resemblance to that of the shadow characters from Persona 5, indicating that this isn't the real Phantom. Then the important part. This shadow phantom then bursts into blue fire, and as his face is consumed by the blaze, we can briefly make out eyes and a mouth remarkably similar to that of the persona from the promotional artwork. As if that wasn't enough, the second shot of the scene and the last shot of the trailer briefly shows us fire consuming his hands and taking the shape of claws. Considering the role Darkside characters played in Persona 4, it's not too hard to figure out what's going on here. And if you remember the second teaser trailer that came out, you'll also pick up on the fact that this blue fire is identical to the fire reflected in the protagonist's glasses. Now granted, the background behind the Shadow Phantom here and the architecture of the crosswalk don't exactly match, but this also gives us a better idea of what happened during the shot in this trailer where someone falls into the crosswalk and becomes the gentlemanly monster persona. So what does this all mean? What happens when we try to take what we've learned over the past 20 minutes and try to put it all together in some cohesive way? We have some ideas, of course, so here they are, the moment nobody's been waiting for. Team Pizza's theory on what the hell is going on in Persona 5. First off, I'm willing to bet you cash money that this kid is coming to the city for the first time. Think of it like an opposite scenario to you from Persona 4, where instead of moving from a big city to a small rural town, the Phantom is moving from a small rural town to the big city. This would explain why he seems so out of place here, even amongst the friends he eventually makes. Given the option, he'd rather be back home, but he has to do this. This is where the schooling he needs is, or at least where everyone in his life is telling him it is. Remember the prison motif. Without volition in our lives, we may as well be behind bars, so the symbolism fits like a glove for this guy's predicament. In fact, the first teaser trailer that came out literally said, "You are a slave. Want emancipation?" Katsura Hoshino, lead producer for the Persona series, has said in interviews that this game is about finding a certain kind of freedom, one meant to liberate those that are bored and discontent with their lives, and this plays nicely into our next theory. Where do the dungeons take place? Think back to the color they chose to represent this game. Red. Red is an aggressive color, almost universally used by cultures around the world as a warning. It's the color of blood and fire, and usually associated with anger or hatred. Now consider the source of this narrative's strife: society and its rules. It's only based on contextual evidence, but we think the city itself is your enemy in Persona 5. Shadows could lurk anywhere or be anyone, and we have a feeling that these guys in the suits are aware of that. But now we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's focus on the chain of events here. The Phantom enters town on the subway train. It's early morning according to our calendar in the top left. Again, thank you to the guys at the translation for this. He gets off at Shibuya Station and enters the town's famous crosswalk. However, it's here that he sees something he wasn't supposed to. Because it's established he has high spiritual sensitivity like the other Persona protagonists, his dark side is drawn to him as soon as he enters the city limits, and becomes a persona right before his eyes. He symbolically walked into something strange and alien that he doesn't understand, and this makes it the scene where teaser trailer 2 likely takes place. It's after this that he's brought to the Velvet Room, likely against his will, to have explained to him what the implications of this event are, and how it will affect his life moving forward. Remember the promotional art and the phrase, "Let us start the game." Whatever this game is, the Phantom just became an unwilling pawn in it all. This is likely what Igor tells him, but there's another theory floating around that's just as fascinating. Recall that you don't have an option for social links in the menu. Recall that you're fighting personas at one point, and on that note, your dark side also turns into a persona. If awakening to spiritual power is what sets off this chain of events, not unlike how it does in the other games, then there's a chance that spiritual power might just be as much of a curse in this game as it is a blessing. The Phantom strived mentally for something more than the meager existence of those around him, but perhaps wasn't ready for the consequences that came with that choice. By subconsciously agreeing to break free and see the city's underbelly, he effectively broke the rules in this society's eyes, and thus is a criminal. This would make the persona his shackle in a way, explaining the chain and working into the idea that his means to be free is also part of what binds him. When he returns to the real world, he's obviously got a lot of thoughts to chew on, which continues into the rest of the morning and even into class. The teacher punishes him for his lack of attention, and due to this, he catches the eye of Anna. Perhaps feeling bad for the new guy, or maybe just attracted to his, quote, rebellious streak, she takes him to the mall in the afternoon, where she introduces the Phantom to our other friend, Ryuji. You'll notice Morgana is also here, perched on top of the railing. In fact, Morgana seems to be the one kink in the theory of the Phantom being a new guy, based on how during that same day in the evening, we see her again fully transformed, and appearing to be at least a part of the conversation that's going on at the cafe. Yet, look how calm everybody is! This is no big deal for any of them, or at least for Ryuji, who's more interested in his magazine than the shape-shifting cat not 3 feet away. The only one that's really transfixed by this character is the Phantom, who Morgana seems to be talking to based on line of sight. Now, I will say this, maybe the Phantom is just chill to a fault. After all, this is the same guy who, during Teaser 2, essentially saw himself burst into flames and turn into a monster, and yet continued to wear an expression of, yeah, that's cool. However, we do have a backup theory. Maybe these kids have all been at this for a while. Maybe, as the story suggests, they've dabbled in things they shouldn't have as a way of breaking the norm, as a way of feeling like they have choice in their otherwise one-track lives. You laugh, but there are people who legitimately do this kind of thing, and often. The Phantom breaks into the building first, indicated by how we only see his status bar at the bottom right of the screen initially. He then catches up with the others later, who are taking a different route inside. Perhaps this is why the movement and cover mechanics are such a big part of the dungeons this time around. If you look at the Phantom's stats compared to the others, they're relatively low. Because of this, until the team gets back together, it might be more in your best interest to maneuver around your enemies instead of trying to shoot your way through them. Its mechanics reflecting theming, which is a hallmark of good design. However, something goes wrong. Instead of confronting shadows like they normally do, of which many are scattered about the building, they encounter personas in the middle of their operation. With no other option but to fight, they destroy these creatures, causing the building to collapse and forcing them all to scatter. The Phantom hops out a window, but is then caught by the city's true authorities, causing him to get thrown into the Velvet Room prison. This would almost put Igor in a bit of an antagonistic role, which would be very interesting to say the least. By the way, just want to clear up a rumor I saw in a lot of the comments sections. No, the Phantom we see here getting caught by the police is not the same Phantom we see at the end of the trailer. He is in front of a brick wall, but the architecture is too rough, the pattern completely different. Furthermore, you'll notice the Shadow Phantom is wearing the school uniform, marked by the 2 arrows on his collar, while we see in many shots that the thieving outfit the normal Phantom wears does not have this detail. Whew! And that, my friends, is absolutely everything we could find in this trailer. It really says something about Persona 5 that so many little details could be taken away from just a single piece of 2-minute long media, and it serves as a testament to just how well realized Atlus games are. I'd like to once again thank the dudes at GameXplain for being the sole inspiration to do a video like this. It was a lot of work, but I had a lot of fun making it. And if you guys think I'm good enough at this, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up, and maybe even consider subscribing. Hell, if you like it enough, maybe I'll analyze more trailers in the future. Also be sure to check out Yongyi's video about the English translation, because it covers a lot of details that I felt would be redundant if we touched on them here. Much love to Claude Smith of heavensfeel.com for helping with that. And please, if I missed absolutely anything, let me know in the comments below. Until then, I'm Whatthefnu. Later, everybody! Beauty!